Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the month of August here at Tales from the Fandom. This is David, talking to you just briefly before we get started with Angela's episode. A lot of the episodes that are coming out this month, the month of August, which I still cannot believe, we're over halfway through 2018 and we're already looking towards 2019, is that a lot of these episodes are recorded in February. I always do bulk recordings of episodes, and then they get released every Monday. But then we had Women in Tabletop Gaming Month, which pushed a lot of these episodes even further back than normal. And with Angela's episode, a lot of things has changed in her life since we recorded. She's actually moved from St. Louis. She started med school. And so she talks about some things that are going on, like C2E2 convention and a few things which are past at this point. But the episode is really strong and really holds up, so not any problems going forward. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here, listening, and checking out all of our podcast episodes. We have a great month lined up this month, and we have a big surprise in store for September, which I will be revealing that later on this month in August. Thanks so much. Enjoy the episode. And welcome to another episode of Tales from the Fandom. Today I am joined by someone that Facebook kindly recommended for me to check out their page, and I loved what they did. And here we are, and I get to talk with Angela of Kiss Kiss, or I get to talk with Angela, also known as Kiss Kiss Cosplay, and she is also a member of a group called the Pretty Guardians. Welcome to the podcast, Angela.
Hi, David. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it is absolutely my pleasure. Now, we're gearing this episode specifically towards cosplay, so I'm really excited to do a really deeper dive than I normally do with some of my other guests that have cosplayed. And I guess the first question is, as always, how did you get into cosplay?
So I'm so excited to talk about these questions with you because I've actually been cosplaying for 10 years now. I realized that this weekend because somebody asked me and I was like, oh God, I've been here longer than like you've been alive. You know, it's been kind of insane because cosplay has seen so many changes over the past 10 years. But 10 years ago, I was on this little website called Gaia Online. I don't know if you've heard of it, but
I have.
Yeah, I don't know. Is it still alive? Is it still happening? I have no idea, but it was my life 10 years ago. And I just happened across a forum about cosplay and conventions. And for some reason, I was just immediately attracted to the idea. I've always wanted a creative outlet, but I don't think I'm a particularly creative person. I loved that I didn't have to design anything from scratch if I didn't want to. You know, cosplay can be all about the accuracy if that's the route you want to go, and you have this beautiful design that you're immediately attracted to, and the creative part is figuring out how to bring that to life. So I was immediately drawn to it. Asked my parents to get me like a little baby sewing machine, you know, from Walmart, and just started messing around with things. You know, there weren't that many cosplay specific resources online back then. There definitely was some. There was a forum called cosplay.com, and that was the primary hub for most cosplayers to converge and share resources. But I really just started sewing pieces of fabric together, and I kept on doing it for another 10 years, and here I am now.
That is awesome. I mean, I think it's recently become like a bigger thing cosplay has. I remember when I was like in Star Trek, like the Star Trek fan club and stuff, that's the only conventions I knew of. The only people dressing up were people dressing up like in Star Trek uniforms or dressing as Klingons and Vulcans. And now it's like this whole new big thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you go into Joann's fabric store, there are materials and patterns and resources specifically for cosplayers. And just the fact that there are, you know, separate wig companies right now, like Arta Wigs, that are specifically geared towards cosplayers. It just blows my mind how many options cosplayers have available now and how mainstream it is. And I know that a lot of people don't like it, but I personally love it. I can say, you know, I cosplay without people being like, what's that? And it's just more of a common language now.
Absolutely. It's always better to have more than less, and, you know, get people to find the things that they need and not make it so hard.
Exactly. The barrier of entry is just so much lower because you can Google tutorials. There's a tutorial out there for, you know, pretty much anything. There are full-length books on making armor and rigging lights into your cosplay. It's just incredible to me, and I'm amazed and very happy that a whole industry has developed around it.
Now, how do you choose who you cosplay? Is it based on the character, the outfit, or a mixture of both?
It's definitely a mixture of both for me, and throwing in another variable into the mix is what my friends are doing. So, you know, for example, if they want to do a full group of, let's say, Sailor Moon, you know, I like Sailor Moon in general, so I don't think I'd be particularly picky about who I'm going to be. And it's more fun to cosplay with friends, for me anyway, than pick someone you really, really love, but cosplay by yourself. So for me, you know, it's like, what are my friends doing? Is the outfit something that I think is beautiful or something that I think will teach me a new skill? And do I like the character enough? If I am morally opposed to this character, I don't think that I'd cosplay them. But you know, if they're a tolerable person to me, I'll be like, sure, why not? I know that for a lot of people, though, they have to really, really love the character in order to bring themselves to build a cosplay of it, and that's completely understandable. You know, if you end up doing, I found that, you know, just joining a group for the sake of joining a group, that can also burn you out pretty quickly as well.
Yeah, I can't imagine sinking, you know, not only a lot of time, but money into somebody that I don't like.
Exactly. So you really have to ration your resources. But for example, there's an artist called Sakizo who has been designing for the past few years all of this beautiful, beautiful, elaborate designs that cosplayers have just been eating up. And they really are just designs. It's usually just standalone art, not affiliated with any sort of storyline or series or anything like that. But cosplayers really like tackling these projects because it's very needlework heavy. You get to do all of these cool embellishments. You get to, you know, play around with a lot of different textures and stuff. And so, for example, you know, even if you're not really invested in the character, if it's aesthetically inspiring for you, then that seems to be perfectly valid as well.
Awesome. Now, who have been some of your favorite characters to cosplay?
I think any character that has a very distinct mood or personality is really fun for me to do, because I'm a very awkward person, David. I'm gonna be real with you. I can't commit to being in character. And I don't know if you know this, but a lot of cosplayers, especially at conventions, they'll be like totally in character. And I respect that so much, because that's just something I cannot bring myself to commit to. So I think for me, it's easier to commit to a particular mood or general attitude rather than a full character. So for example, this past weekend, I cosplayed a character from a mobile game called Puzzle and Dragons. Have you heard of it?
I have not.
Well, I definitely recommend it. It's very addicting. So if you don't have like 20 hours a week to spare, then don't download it. But I cosplayed a character called Persephone, which is based off of Persephone, the goddess of hell. And so even though she doesn't have a very distinct personality or a very developed character, she was just kind of, you know, moody and angsty and, you know, life is meaningless and I'm gonna step on you and stuff like that. And I think that was very fun and easy for me to channel.
Okay. I know when I was looking at your pictures on Facebook, the one that sprung out to me is Azula from Avatar.
I was also going to bring up Azula. Azula was so much fun because you literally just called everyone a peasant. You acted like everyone was a peasant. And, you know, you just went about your business.
Now, one of the questions as we get deeper into like the cosplay talk is Do you feel there are fandoms that maybe are overrepresented or cosplay, or on the flip side, are there others that are underrepresented?
I definitely think that the flavor of the month for cosplayers comes in these enormous waves that have to do with series popularity. So for example, right now, I would say that Overwatch cosplay and Boku no Hero Academia cosplay are at the peak of their cosplay hype. You can't go to a convention without seeing those cosplays. And that's great. You know, I love both of them, but I can imagine, you know, the characters designs are fun. And they're just like both really solid franchises. But, you know, for example, 7 years ago, the hot cosplays were like Naruto. And then 5 years ago, it evolved into Homestuck and Hitalia and stuff like that. So there's always been a flavor of, not of the month, flavor of the year for cosplayers. And it's super fun because if you're someone who's cosplaying from that series, you get to this convention and you see all of these other people who love the same things that you do. And it's a very easy icebreaker. But on the flip side, you know, there definitely are series that are underrepresented, you know, like one-shot mangas or maybe super obscure series that might not be on the typical streaming sites like Netflix or Crunchyroll. I'd say that those are definitely harder to come across. But in general, you know, I don't think it matters to a lot of people.
Okay, I was going to ask you, because you cosplayed as Persephone from this mobile game. Do you find it's harder to cosplay where people may not know who you're cosplaying as?
I think for me, where I derive my primary value as a cosplayer is not from recognition at a convention, but I completely understand if there are people who do. So, you know, it doesn't feel good to spend a few $100s and a few thousand hours making something that nobody can really appreciate, you know, that doesn't feel great. But it also doesn't feel great to define your worth as a cosplayer around, you know, recognition at a convention. So Persephone, I feel, for example, was a very peculiar situation where the build itself, I would say, was pretty impressive. So people could definitely appreciate it without knowing the source material. But I definitely have done some cosplays a few years ago, or, you know, throughout my career where people just totally did not recognize me. And that comes with its own satisfaction because you can actually enjoy the con without being stopped every few minutes for pictures, which is also very fun. But, you know, sometimes it's hard to get from point A to point B if you're wearing not only a very cumbersome costume, but a very popular costume. So it totally varies from person to person.
Yeah, I will never understand the people that have like the big mech suits or something, just being able to make it through a con just without being stopped so many times for pictures.
I know, it's impossible. And honestly, for me, that's partially why sometimes I don't even bring bigger costumes to conventions. It takes forever to get into. You can't really get anything done as an attendee. And I prefer to have photo shoots with a lot of my costumes on location. So going to, you know, like a forest or a really cool industrial setting and taking pictures there rather than at a convention.
Okay. What is your cosplay process from, like, you choose your character? What happens from then to like your finished product?
So once I choose a cosplay, I tend to like to keep my processes very condensed. So from start to finish, I'll try to get a costume done in a few weeks, you know, maybe like a week or two up until 2 months. Like that's my upper limit, because if I drag out the process longer than that, at least for me, I'll lose focus. So as soon as I decide on a costume, I like to just start doing as much research as possible on materials, trying to get a cohesive aesthetic vision for it, and maybe either make a materials board, like for example, collecting a lot of different swatches of fabric and materials and putting it all together to make sure it will be all cohesive. starting to buy up things and using various sources like Etsy and eBay and Joann's and Home Depot, and just making sure I have everything I need. And then just getting it done. You know, when I'm in the process of working on a costume, I really do not do much else with my life, David. Like, my friends don't see me, my family doesn't hear from me. Yeah, it's definitely an all immersive process for me, but I know that I'm the type of worker where if I drag it out or, you know, I'll try to pace myself, I'll just lose focus. You know, I need to be like totally immersed in it in order to get it done.
Have there been any cosplays that you where you kind of drug it out and you just never finished them?
Yes, I am literally staring at, I printed out a ton of references for Bayonetta from the game Bayonetta 2, and I have them pasted all over my dining room wall because I need to look at it every day to motivate myself to finish. I've been working on this since towards the end of 2015.
Okay.
It has so many different pieces that it's definitely not the type of project that I can just get done in a few weeks. But then, you know, once I get to month 3 of working on it for a short period of time, I'm like, I have to move on, you know, I have to do something else that'll actually get done in time for this convention. So it goes on the back burner, and then it comes out for another few months, and then back burner again, another few months. So it's just the nature of the costume. I've never really worked on something this involved or complex, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's one character that it seems like there's a lot of stuff just involved in it. It's not just a simple, you know, skirt or dress or pattern, that it's just a lot.
Exactly, and every single element is totally challenging and new to me, which I'm very, very intimidated by. So I'm trying to get her done for C2E2 in April. So we'll see what happens. My fiance has literally been saying, you're grounded from making any other costumes until you finish Bayonetta.
Oh my gosh. But can't you be like, but I got this other one that I could totally knock out in like a week.
I have said that, and I think he's done with me. He's just putting his foot down. He's like, no, you have to finish it. Those guns have been sitting in our closet for like 2 years. So it's, you know what? I think I need this push.
Now, I know, you know, I'm new to the world of cosplay as far as I go to cons, but my main cosplay stuff that like I talk about is with my different guests here on the podcast. And obviously, like, there's a lot of assumptions that people make about cosplayers, whether they see pictures of them or you see them at the convention or see them walking around or doing photo shoots and stuff. What are some of the things that people might need to understand about cosplay or cosplayers, or, you know, assumptions that maybe they're like, you need to like correct them on?
Well, I definitely think that within the cosplay community, there are definitely some judgments that are made about either people that buy their costumes or people that choose to approach cosplay a bit more casually. So people might be a bit judgmental of individuals that buy their costume from a, you know, like a cosplay site, rather than make it themselves. And I think that that's just kind of ridiculous, honestly. You know, like, we're just a bunch of nerds dressing up. Like, I don't understand why there needs to be these intense divisions within the community, because I feel like it should be more of a sense of camaraderie, regardless of how you decide to approach the hobby. You know what I mean? And not everyone is crazy enough to spend hundreds of dollars and thousands of hours like teaching yourself how to sew and make foam look like armor. You know what I mean? Like, if you have other priorities, then I think people should be respectful of that and encouraging of that. And from an outsider's perspective, I sometimes get the sense that people who don't cosplay might convolute cosplay with a form of sex work, because, you know, sexy cosplaying has been definitely on the rise. And I definitely appreciate it and think that it's a great way of expressing yourself. And honestly, like I've had a lot of friends who have really added to their self-esteem and self-image by learning how to embrace their own body image through cosplay. So overall, I think it's a really positive phenomenon, but I do get the sense that because that is the side of cosplay that a lot of non-cosplayers see first, that they kind of assume that, oh, all of cosplay is like a sexy fetish thing. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, because and that's one of the things that I was thinking of when you're answering the question, is that even within the cosplay community, because I follow different people, and there's people that have like their Patreon sites or their websites, and if you pay a certain amount of money, you get to see like special pictures or maybe like not safe for work pictures.
Right,
and,
like they have lewd photo sets.
Yeah, and I know that there's the conversation that, oh, are they really doing, you know, quote unquote cosplay at that point, or is it something else? And it's such a very, it's like, it seems like it's a very divisive topic depending on like who you're talking to about it.
It definitely is. And, you know, I just mentioned that people outside of the community might think that, but even people within the community definitely have a hard time differentiating their own values. You know what I mean? A lot of people aren't really sure on where they stand on it. A lot of people, I know, unfortunately, are very hostile towards it. But again, I think that that's only because people who aren't cosplayers tend to lump in other cosplayers with this image. And it's hard to understand, you know, not everyone has a Patreon. Not everyone does that, is comfortable doing that sort of content. And it gets muddled because at conventions sometimes you'll get a lot of pretty sexually aggressive people that aren't even cosplayers. You know, it's the people who don't normally attend conventions that get it a little mixed up in their head that, you know, these people in cosplay are just attendees like you. They're not a spectacle. They're not, you know, an object that you can just like objectify whenever you want. And that's why at a lot of conventions you might see like cosplay isn't consent signs or just gentle reminders that, you know, we're not just booth babes.
Right. You're one of the people that has been in cosplay for a longer period of time that I've actually recorded with. How has it changed for you since you started from to now, as far as that percent? Has it gotten different, better, worse, changing? Like, is it like the ebb and flow just depending on like what the flavor of the month or year is? Like, I know like Harley Quinn is one of those that a lot of people have that, you know, attraction to. You know, how has it changed in that 10 years?
I think that not only the flavor of the years in terms of costumes, but the flavor of the years in terms of what all the good cosplayers are doing, or what all the big cosplayers are doing, has also very much changed. So I feel that back when I started in 2017 or 2007, 2008, the big thing to do was cosplay skits at masquerades. Or, you know, silly YouTube videos in cosplay. That's what it gradually evolved to. So 2007 to 2012 or 13, I feel, was very much, you do a cosplay skit, and that's how you get your claim to fame. Or you make funny videos in cosplay on YouTube, and that's like what you do. And then after that, it kind of moved more towards, you sell prints. That's what all the big cosplayers do, you know. You have photo shoots and then you sell prints. And now I feel like it's moved on to, you know, everyone has a Patreon, like this is, or a Ko-Fi, like this is how you fund your hobby. And so I feel like it's definitely evolved as technology has accommodated towards cosplayers, one, and as cosplay has evolved to even include opportunities to support your own hobby, you know, through print selling and through Patreon and through all of these other options. So I don't know. I'm interested in seeing what the next step is.
Yeah, I know that for the people that have like the Patreons or the Ko-fi or Coffee, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Um, but it's interesting to see when especially geared towards cosplayers, I feel like there's a lot of, well, you're doing this anyway. Why should I, give you money because you're going to do it anyway? And that's been the big thing when I see cosplayers post about it. I see a lot of people, respond back to, well, that like that same thing that I just said, like about like, oh, you're doing it anyway. Why should I pay you? I mean, if you're doing this, you should do it for like as your hobby, and if you can't afford to, don't do it. But then on the flip side, I see those people commenting, well, what will I get out of it? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge on some of the people that are cosplaying.
Mm-hmm. It definitely puts up a transactional barrier within this field. I totally understand the arguments that you just summarized for, why should I give you my money? But for most of the Patreons I've seen, at least, it's been more of a sense of, if you want to support me in this additional manner, you definitely deserve to have some other perks. It's just giving people the option of supporting your artists that you really like. Or, a lot of times it can be more transactional, having access to exclusive pictures or exclusive tutorials or stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I am a little split on how I feel about it, but in the end of the day, it's not my business and it doesn't really affect me. You know what I mean? Like, I have no right to judge what anyone else is doing.
Exactly. Like, if people want to pay money, go for it. If you don't want to pay the money, move on and just, see whatever the people post on Instagram or Facebook, or, you go to conventions.
Exactly. And at least personally, I definitely support a lot of my either my friends or cosplayers that I really admire on Patreon, because I want to see them, at their A game. I want to do whatever I can to support them.
Now, moving on from that is an interesting question, and it's basically, are you a competitive cosplayer?
I am a competitive cosplayer. I'm not at my peak anymore. I'm kind of retired, but there was a point a few years back where I felt like my life was kind of revolving around competing in cosplay, masquerades and stuff. So I actually, my biggest undertaking was competing in the World Cosplay Summit. Have you ever heard of that?
I have. I just had two friends that I've recorded with from Texas announce that they were going to enter.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, so World Cosplay Summit was probably at its peak in maybe 2012 to 2014. It's calmed down a little since then, just because I feel like masquerades and cosplay competitions aren't really the focus of most cosplayers anymore. But basically, World Cosplay Summit is an international competition that has preliminaries in each participating country. So, for example, in the US, the preliminary is at Anime Expo this year. So teams of 2 cosplayers enter and they get judged for craftsmanship. They get judged for, I think it's like a 2-minute long skit. And whoever wins gets sent to compete against other countries' representatives in Japan the following summer. So it's, obviously super high stakes, super awesome opportunity to travel abroad, not only as like a tourist, but also as kind of an ambassador, which is just like mind blowing to me, And so like that was one of me and my friend Danielle's primary motivating forces for getting good at cosplay. We really wanted to compete in World Cosplay Summit, and for the 2015 cycle, we actually did. And it just like knocked all the wind off out of me. It was kind of exhausting. And, I don't think we were really ready for what we signed up for. I don't think we were good enough to be up against all the people that we were, but we did meet some like absolutely incredible friends that we still talk to today. And since then, we've done a lot of more low key, still very intense competitions, but more that are a little less high stakes. You know, it's competing for our own personal enjoyment, not necessarily to become an ambassador or anything like that.
What was that competition like as far as the World Cosplay Summit?
It was crazy because on one end, you have to remember that the people who are organizing this are cosplayers just like you. They had kind of a system where their alums would do a lot of the coordination and organization for the next year's event. And at times it was kind of frustrating because, you know, they're not professional event organizers. They're just they're basically volunteers that are just doing their best and donating this time to giving people a good experience. But, you know, they can't account for everything that happens organizationally. At least at our finals, which were held at Midwest Media Expo in 2015, it was just kind of a lot of people figuring things out as they went, which is totally understandable. You don't really know what you're signing up for when you host an event of this caliber. But it was very hectic, and there was a lot of last minute changes and last minute accommodations for people. Like, I remember a pair of our friends, they were at the airport in Seattle, I think, to fly over to the finals. And the people that were responsible for booking their flight never booked it, which is insane, to show up the day of your flight and to be told you don't have a flight. So
that's crazy.
I know. And it wasn't like the organization's fault. It wasn't even like the hosting con's fault. It was like some other random removed party that was related to their preliminaries. I don't particularly remember, but so they had to front the cost for the tickets themselves. And then that plane that they eventually got on, I think it went down in Chicago prematurely because some passenger got sick. It was like the biggest mess ever. And then they got to the con and they didn't even have hotel rooms or something. It was just insane. It was just chaos, honestly.
What is it that you enjoy as far, like back when you were competing, what was it that you enjoyed with the competition side of it?
I think I'm just one of those people who likes having a rubric to judge their own progress by. So for me, winning a contest is a good milestone for me to judge my own improvement, for example. So when you compete, you sort yourself into 3 categories. You can be a novice, you can be a journeyman, and you can be a master. Those are the 3 categories normally. And novice is never won a cosplay contest before. Journeyman has won 1 or 2 major awards. And then master is either you're an industry professional or you've won several major awards. The major awards are usually best in show, which is best in both performance and craftsmanship. Best craftsmanship, best performance, or best in a category for either. And I still do compete. Our last competition was at Holiday Matsuri in December 2017. So it's not like it's a totally dead practice for me or anything. It's just that at the point where I'm at, I feel like I produce a certain type of work that is going to get a certain type of prize. So for the last 2 competitions, our groups won best craftsmanship, which is definitely an accomplishment, and we were very proud, but I just feel like I can't break the barrier. I can't do the extra 10% that would make me competitive for best in show. Yeah, so it's a little, I'm like having an identity crisis right now related to competitive cosplay. I'm like, am I going to be pigeonholed as a craftsmanship cosplayer forever? And, is it worth continuing to try to break out of that mold?
I could imagine not wanting to be, pigeonholed like that, but on the same time, I'd be like, damn, like I'm super awesome at like craftsmanship.
It it definitely helps me feel more confident about my craftsmanship. And that's definitely a point of pride for me. You know, like my favorite part about about the whole cosplay process is when I get a little extra time to make sure that all of the tiny, tiny details on the costume are as precise as possible. Like my friends all joke that I love adding bling to my costumes. So anything that I can make sparkly or glittery or shiny, I will. And I think that that type of detail goes over really well when judging craftsmanship.
Now, you said you're a part of a group called the Pretty Guardians. What is that group?
So the Pretty Guardians are a St. Louis-based Sailor Moon cosplay group. And honestly, they're just like my life right now. I found them about a year and a half ago. They started as just two girls who posted in the St. Louis cosplayers group saying, hey, we're new cosplayers, but we're looking to put together a Sailor Moon cosplay group. And basically we would just go to cons together, do different Sailor Moon outfits together, and just be like this girl gang. And I was kind of like, this is weird, and I've never ever done anything like this before. But you know, cosplaying alone has gotten kind of stale for me, and it's hard to keep your momentum and your motivation when it becomes almost an isolated process for you. So I was like, you know what? I'll give it a shot. Maybe these new cosplayers, these youngins will inject some life into like my grumpy grandma style of cosplay. And they absolutely have. They've like brought new life into cosplaying for me. Basically, we spent the past year and a half focusing on perfecting our fukus. Do you know Sailor Moon at all? It's like the classic outfit.
Oh, yes, I do.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So we've spent like the first year, focusing on like really finding the right cast, because especially at the beginning, we had some girls come in and out who maybe didn't necessarily know what they were signing up for, or you know, maybe like we just didn't get along as well as we thought that we should. So we spent the first year kind of finalizing our cast and making sure that everybody had like a top quality fuku. And some girls like remade their fukus 2 or 3 times. It was nuts. We're all just a bunch of crazy perfectionists, but you know, we thrive off of each other, so it really works out.
And as far as the Pretty Guardians group, do you go to, I assume, like competitions together or conventions together, or do like outside activities?
Yeah, so it was weird because we never really defined the type of stuff we would be doing together. We've kind of just figured it out as we went. We haven't competed yet. But we do plan a few official Pretty Guardians conventions every year. Maybe we do 2 or 3 a year. Our next one is Anime St. Louis. And we set a costume for that convention. If it's something we've made already, great. If it's something we haven't, we set up workshops to work together on those costumes. Sometimes we get invited as guests to conventions. Sometimes we get to do panels about either Sailor Moon stuff or about cosplay stuff or about group stuff. We try to organize retreats as well, just bonding retreats for all of us to get to know each other a little better. We all know each other like really well at this point, though. We all like love and hate each other at the same time. And last summer, we actually went to the Ozarks for our retreat. We got this amazing cabin that had 10 separate bunks. So all of us just, you know, it was really like a bonding trip. We all just like huddled together in our little bunks, and then we went out kayaking and we just dicked around the little town, and we had a photo shoot in the water, and it was just so much fun. It's like a group of sisters to cosplay with.
It's interesting when you talk about your group, because I follow other like Sailor Moon groups. And it's like the same thing. They go out and they do retreats and they do work projects and all together. And it's very much like it's the only type of group that I see in the cosplay community that seems to do that, is like the Sailor Moon groups.
Right? Yeah, it's amazing. And we've gotten to know some of the other ones. Like, I don't know if you follow Sailor Scouts of Jacksonville.
Yep.
Yeah, so they we're probably the closest to them. They're amazing. All of their scouts are amazing. And we got pretty close to some of their members as we got our feet off the ground. And we're still in very much close communication. And it's just so funny because even within the Sailor Moon groups, there's just such a sense of sisterhood. Like we all follow each other. We all root each other on. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible, especially to just watch the groups interact, not only like amongst themselves, but like I remember seeing them at a convention here in Orlando, and I was like, wow, just like all of them together, perfect like gel.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of insane. And I think you get that vibe from Sailor Moon groups because Sailor Moon is about sisterhood, and everybody who likes Sailor Moon has very much internalized those values,
Mm-hmm. Now, what projects besides Bayonetta? Because I know that you're going to get it done by C2E2.
You're right, David. I am. I'm going to get that costume done and out of my life.
But beyond that one, what's on your board of the next ones that you want to be working on?
So this year, I'm committing to embracing my body and empowering myself to love my body. So I'm actually going more on the risque side of things. Bayonetta is not, modest. It has an open back and it has these cutout diamonds that go all the way down her legs. So, and she's a very confident and sexually empowered woman. So I'm like, yes, I will be Bayonetta. I will love myself. And aside from her, I also am thinking about a Psylocke cosplay from X-Men. So we'll see where that leads. I'm thinking about doing her classic outfit, which is basically a purple leotard with some straps on her legs and then like high boots and fingerless gloves. So I think that would be like a really fun, comfy, and easy costume for C2E2 as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then for Anime St. Louis with the Pretty Guardians, we're actually going to be doing a bunny suit group because we found some really great art of the sailors in these really, really adorable, like Playboy style bunny suits. So we're going to have a full group of that. We're mixing the canon design with some design ideas that our members have. So it's not going to be like totally accurate per se, but it's going to be a lot of fun and we're all super excited for this.
Awesome. Are there any that you see and you're like, I want to do that, but then at the other time you're like, you know what, I need to just wait and maybe next year?
I literally do that with like every time I watch a show. I'm watching Kakegurui on Netflix right now. It's like a school gambling anime, and I love the main character. I'm like, I'm gonna cosplay that, and my fiance is like, no, you're not. So, and even when I'm watching like Game of Thrones or something, I'm like, I'm gonna cosplay that. I'm gonna cosplay everything. I have a full folder on my laptop. I am just constantly thinking about what to cosplay. It's honestly pretty intrusive.
I can't imagine how that must be to watch a show and just be like, maybe on your laptop as you're watching like new folder.
Literally, that's literally what happens. Or I'm on Etsy looking up materials already instead of actually watching the show and getting to know the character better. It's kind of like an addiction, yeah. But for now, I'm very content with just focusing on those 3 projects and getting it done before the summer, hopefully, and just letting my mind take me wherever it does.
Now, on the topic of cosplay, is there anything that maybe we haven't covered that you want to put out there for the podcast?
I think that there are a lot of people who are on the fence about cosplaying and maybe don't either because of, they don't think they have the resources to do the kind of stuff that they're seeing, or, they don't feel confident enough with their self-image to get started. But my best advice is just do it. You can find a way to do whatever you want, whether it's just like going to Goodwill and picking out things that you think look close enough to a character, or like buying a Halloween wig. Like, it absolutely does not matter. Everyone has to start somewhere. And especially with all of the resources that are out there now, I think it's very easy to become intimidated by the general level of work that's out there in the cosplay community right now, but everyone starts somewhere. Nobody's first costume looks good. You know what I mean? And if it does, then like you're already ahead of the game. As long as if you want to cosplay, there is no reason to not cosplay. And that's my final thought. Yep.
That's a good final thought. I was just thinking back to the convention we went to last year as a family. And my wife was like, I know how to make a no-sew Han Solo vest. And she got this plain black t-shirt and she cut it. And that was it.
And that was it. And that's perfect. You know, that's exactly what you need sometimes.
Yes, you do not have to invest a lot of money. You just have to figure out those tips and tricks to get you started to see if you like it.
Exactly. You don't even have to know how to sew. I mean, one of my first costumes was like stapled together. And while I don't particularly recommend that, it's still, you know, you have options and you can do whatever you want. There are no rules to this, and no one except for people you wouldn't want to be friends with anyway is going to judge you for that.
Exactly. You got to do, you know, make yourself happy first, and then who cares about what the other people are going to say.
Absolutely.
Now, for people that have listened to your episode today and they want to follow you or follow, you know, the Pretty Guardians group, what are the best places to do so?
So the best place to connect to me is through Instagram. My username is Angierah, AngierAAAH. I definitely need to change that into something easier, but I haven't figured it out yet. And facebook.com/KissKissCosplay. And Pretty Guardians is also mostly on Instagram, instagram.com/PrettyGuardians. So I'd love to connect with anyone who's listening today. If you have any questions about anything I said, or if you want to, you know, send me hate mail, that's fine as well. I'll take it all. And, you know, thanks so much for having me. This has been so much fun.
It is my pleasure. And if anyone sends you hate mail and I find out about it, I will not be pleased.
All right, David will come after you.
You can send your hate mail to talesfromthefandom@gmail.com, but there's absolutely no reason to do so because there's no hate.
I'm sure you have a very, very, very well dignified audience.
I would like to think so. I hope the audience feels that way too.
They're like, no, we're a bunch of heathens.
Angela, I want to just say it's been my pleasure to get to talk with you today. I'm so happy that Facebook was like, here, check this person out. And I was like, okay, I'll do that, Facebook.
Yeah, sometimes Facebook really leads you down a good rabbit hole.
And sometimes they're just listening in on any of my conversations.
I know, and then sometimes they're just taking all of your personal information.
But it has absolutely been my pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Oh, thank you, David. I hope we get to connect again soon in the future.
Me too. If you're ever in the Orlando area, I'm here.
Okay, great. I wish I knew that for Holiday Matsuri.
Well, there's always another one next year, or this year, whatever it is.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/talesfromthefandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.